So, when it comes to the UK, things are looking pretty bad. Like, you must admit, almost every single day, pretty negative things are just coming out the woodwork. So what you're about to see is an average month in the UK, where things started off weird, then they got strange. Then honestly, it just finishes off with some pretty awful stuff. But like I said, we started the month off in a very weird way. Because not only can you see Sadiq Khan looking like a pretty dodgy fella about to offer you sweets, he's actually gone one step further, and he's offered to buy nappies for anyone that he sees shoplifting. Like, just full on offered to pay for all of the shoplifting. But there was a big problem with Sadiq's statement. He hasn't actually done it yet. So he wants the credit for doing the good deed, when he hasn't actually done the deed itself. And I know that Sadiq is not usually the one to do this, but I do actually think this is a pretty clever move. So I would say that this might be Sadiq Khan's first ever IQ point. But to be fair, we saw straight through this after about 10 seconds. But someone with a similar IQ to Sadiq is whoever's made this article for GB News. To be fair, it was probably this one here. Because it says that the majority of GB News viewers are actually Labour voters. Which, I really don't think anyone forecasted that at all. Because they have actually done some pretty decent work at GB News. They've got some good hosts with a lot of good people. But unfortunately, they've also done quite a bit of bending. And the very next day, we saw something else bend the rules as well. Because we saw this from the Welsh Government outside of a school. Believe it or not, right, this is a 20-mile-an-hour sign. To be fair, they would call it a 20 sign, but I think I would call it a blurring of the law. Like I said, it's meant to be a 20-mile-an-hour sign. But this isn't a joke, and it's not like the ones where they just get the local kids to make them and put them in the local community. Like where they just put them on every single lamppost. This is the official sign. And what gets me right is that they say that you're the dangerous one. You know, you're just that dangerous that you need the government to tell you what speed to travel. But they're gonna put up a road sign outside of a school with a tongue and a tail. Like what? I know seconds count when you're driving, but this is just unbelievable. And because the government are they're just crazy about slowing you down. It turns out that the general public are actually starting to stand up. Because almost 2,000 ULEZ cameras have literally been taken down. And they've done this in less than 1 year. Which I can only imagine how Sadiq Khan feels about this. Because he needs you to quite literally needs you to think that everyone is on board with ULEZ. He pretty much wants you to think that it is 100% success rate. But articles like this one just show you that Sadiq is actually on the losing end. But again, the very next day, because this month is just weird, it turns out that Sadiq Khan is not the only one looking to take your cash. Because according to this article, 3 out of 4 burglaries in the UK go completely unsolved. That's 75% where the police can't catch the criminal. And this is it's your house. It is meant to be safe. It's meant to be the safest place that you've got. But as you can see on screen, that works out to almost 250,000 households every single year. 250,000 burglaries every year where the police can't catch the guy. 250,000. That is awful. But it's not just the crime in your house that you need to look out for. It's also the madness that's happening down the road. Because this article that we saw the very next day was about shoplifting specifically. But even more precise than that, if you check that second line there, the smaller one below the headline, it says that crime is at its highest level in England and Wales for 20 years. And this is something that we've all known before. It's something that you felt, pretty much as you walk around your own country. So you could see this happen from a long way away. But when you see it laid out in a sentence like that, it really does show you how bad things have gotten. I would imagine in a couple of years' time that's going to be upgraded to 30 years. And like I said, things are not going to improve anytime soon. Because what we saw the very next day, it's only going to add to the situation. Because we saw 711 migrants cross the Channel in 1 day. And if that sounds high, then it's because it is. Because that's the highest number that we've had so far this year. That's 711 random people. And let's say, let's just say for the maths, let's say that all 711 paid £1,000. That is 711 grand. Like, that is just spent by people crossing the English Channel. Like, I'm pretty sure they could, like, first of all, where did they get that money? But I would really love to know, like, could they not just put that money to good use elsewhere? Like, I've never been to Sudan, and I don't think I'll be going anytime soon. But I really think that £1,000 goes quite a long way in Sudan. But when the migrants do eventually land on the British coast, I think they're going to be pretty confused because they're going to be wondering why everyone is driving so slow. Because Lyme Regis, which is a town on the south coast of England, it's looking to turn into a 20-mile-an-hour zone. And this isn't just like a few small roads or like places like schools and hospitals. They're going full force with the meaning of zone, because it is the entire town. And you can see by the map on screen, but basically everything that is inside that red circle, every single road, they're trying to turn into a load of 20-mile-an-hours. And what gets me about things like this, right, is that this town, and to be fair, you can see it from the map, this town just looks like every other town in the UK. Like, there's a very good chance that you live in a very similar place to this. And if it could happen to them, then obviously it could happen to us. And because we like numbers, but numbers really don't like us, we saw that out of almost 30,000 illegal migrants, only 155 had been removed from the UK. That works out to 0.5%. Like, those are the people that have been essentially sent back home. That is absolutely mad. Because obviously everyone knows that the British border is just completely wide open right now. Like, it's no secret, everyone knows that. You'd like to think that they've got a solid solution on, like, what happens when they actually do make it in. Like, you'd think the government would have something in place to, like, counteract the fact that our border's just completely wide open. But they don't. Like, it's wide open, so they let them all in, and then when it comes to getting them out, they leave 99.5% in. Honestly. But to take our minds off the lunacy, because I think we're going to go insane, we had to take a trip up north. To be more precise, we went to Hadrian's Wall. But unfortunately, when we arrived, it turns out that it needed some decolonisation, because this is a new job that they're putting in place, and I'm really not sure what they're going to be doing. But they're paying these people £475 a day. So like I said, just decolonise Hadrian's Wall. It's history, like, they should just leave it alone. But instead they're going to give someone 475 quid to, I don't know, like, put a few signs up or something. But because the council are not exactly known for spending money wisely, we saw a pothole that is older than my daughter. Because this was 11 years old. Imagine that, 11 years old. And this particular one was located in Essex. But honestly, it's really not an award that any council wants to win. But somehow they've managed to leave this one in the ground for over a decade. Like, that really is awful. So they've either left it in the ground for all that time, or they have filled it in, and whatever they used has essentially just crumbled like Weetabix. Again, it really makes you wonder why we even bother paying road tax. And speaking of things just crumbling away, the very next day we saw how bad things are at the UK border. Because we've paid £700 million to France to protect it. 700 million. But if you were wondering, like, if we actually got good value for money with that, well, it turns out the government are not going to tell you. In fact, it's actually being kept a secret on the government website. They used to give you the numbers, but now, for some undisclosed reason, they've decided to just remove that column entirely. So like I said, we're paying the French almost £750 million. And we're not able to see if it's money well spent. That is absolutely awful. But the French aren't the only people that are trying to sort out the border. Because Keir Starmer's trying to do it, and he's got a really weird way of going about it. Because Keir Starmer has decided to make a day one promise of cancelling every single Rwanda flight. He just wants to scrap the plan entirely. What gets me about this one, right? Not only is it a day one promise, but the very fact that we've already paid hundreds of millions of pounds to Rwanda. Like, we've already given them the money, but I really doubt that we're going to get any refunds. In fact, I'll actually put it on screen for you now. It says that the government has already paid Kigali £220 million. And Kigali is the capital of Rwanda. But that's almost £250 million. And there's going to be no refunds. There's going to be no chance at getting this back. I don't even think the Rwandans still have it. But that is Keir Starmer's day one plan. Like day one. Essentially meaning that Keir Starmer just wants to delete £220 million. And he wants to do it on day one. That is absolutely mad. And you'll have to forgive the highlights on the next article. It was left over from the video itself. But it was about freedom of information requests. It's something that I would say is actually pretty important. But it turns out that the government would completely disagree. Because we saw how only 34% are being answered. That is 34% of freedom of information requests. That is absolutely crazy. 34%. Because let's imagine this, right? Let's say that the wife asks you a question, and she demands to know the answer, so she puts you on the spot. Now let's say that you do the clever thing, and you turn around and you say, listen, I'll only tell you 34%. Honestly, how is that going to go down for you? Do you really think the missus is just going to accept it? Absolutely not. But when it comes to the tax-paying public, apparently the government just think that we're going to accept it as it is. But 34% of freedom of information requests. That is so low. Only 34% are being answered. Like, what are they doing that's so dodgy? But the next day we did actually see some slightly good news. Albeit it's probably too little too late. Because we saw how a government minister has announced a ban on diversity-related jobs. And this is to do with the civil service. The article actually describes her as a common sense minister. And whilst I would say that this is common sense, I don't think I'm ever going to give someone that cringe level of a nickname. Like they work in the government. There is no common sense. But like I said, this is actually a move in the right direction. Because these diversity jobs, they've just been going on for so long now. Like, if anything, most of the places that you come across, most of them do have these sorts of jobs. And all they're doing is just getting rid of the civil service ones. I mean, it's a good start. But I really don't know how much they're going to be able to reverse this. Because like I said, this push has been in place for far too long. And as a result, they're now coming after your work Christmas party. To be more precise, they're demanding that you make it more inclusive. Because obviously not everyone drinks, and we know that. But this article says that 34% of the workforce, 34% have a problem with drinking. I really don't think that 34% includes people like us. Like, obviously there will be a minuscule amount of British people who are against it, but it's not going to be a large chunk of the population. If anything, it's to do with the Muslim faith. Because as you might know, alcohol is actually banned in that religion. They call it haram, but we're just going to call it banned. Meaning that they can't have alcohol at these work parties. And if you ask me, I think that's where the majority of the 34% comes from. Because if we're not going to drink with them, what are we going to do? Just play pass the parcel with these people? I don't think so. But whilst people are after your drinks, other people are trying to cross the UK border. Because our government have given the super trustworthy nation known as Albania. Our government has given them £1.6 million. And that money is to be used for drones to search for migrants. Like just genuine drones just flying around the Albanian border. They're also going to be looking for number plates of specific cars that they know do the smuggling. And all of this is costing 1.6 million quid. Now I know what you're thinking. Clown, how can we spend £1.6 million when the government has never bought me a drone? And again, you're absolutely spot on, because the government has never bought you a drone. Yet when it comes to Albania, apparently it's just covered by our taxes. Like 1.6 million, I suppose if it does the job, then it's not exactly the worst waste of money ever. But knowing this government, I don't even think they're going to give us any statistics. And then we got on to one of my personal favourite videos so far. Honestly, I was just laughing through the entire thing. Basically, as you're aware, half of Africa want to come to the UK. Well, roughly. But it turns out, and I have double-checked this with the map data, it turns out that Africa is 125 times the size of the UK. 125, yet they want to come here. 125 times the size. And there are some, half-decent-ish places in Africa.
it's not all clay roads. I mean, look at this one, for example. Not a pothole in sight. So like I said, there are some half-decent-ish places in Africa. You might have to root them out and go searching quite far. But if you're born in somewhere like Ethiopia, Eritrea, Sudan, Somalia, one of the more Ross Kemp type places, honestly, moving to somewhere like Rwanda or Nigeria, it's definitely a step up. It might not be England, it might not be Britain, but it is going to be a step up from their original country. But instead of travelling thousands of miles, as well as paying thousands of pounds to do it, all they'd have to do to just go to a new country is literally just cross the border. It might even be a couple of miles away from their original position. But no, they don't want to cross the border. They want to do the 1,000-mile plan. It really makes no sense. Then you remember that we have universal credit. And that is pretty bizarre, but I don't think it's as bizarre as this next story. Because they're trying to get you to eat the bugs once again. But how they're going about... But basically, they did a survey, and they asked people if they would eat insects. Obviously, we're all aware that we're not going to eat bugs. People keep trying, but like I said, it's just not happening. But like I said, they needed a survey to tell them that. And this isn't just a random survey either. This is from a university based in Leicester. And they needed a survey to tell them this. I mean, they really do sound like a pair of bug eaters themselves. But the results that they got was that only 13% of people would be willing to eat bugs regularly. I mean, that is pretty surprisingly, that is 1 in 10. So that is pretty high. But 13% of people would eat bugs regularly. I'd like to know who this 1 in 10 is, because I don't think they're going to be a friend of the channel. But the very next day, because again, this was a very bad month, we saw how people were taking hammers and lighters into shops. And they were doing this so that they could break those plastic security tags off of the alcohol bottles. And you can imagine what it's like being a shop assistant at Tesco's. Imagine you've got to make the choice between doing nothing and interfering with someone who's clearly a bit loose. Because when you visit any shop, you pretty much just take your debit card. You're not sat there taking hammers and lighters. But whilst we're surrounded by all of this negativity, we actually did see one positive story. We actually did see some good news. Because Anne Robinson from The Weakest Link has given away £50 million to her family. Now, I do agree that this is... it's basically just a rich person doing rich people stuff. So I don't think it's a situation that many of us are going to get into. They're essentially taking pretty much half. Half of everything that you've ever worked for. When you move on, they just take it. Not only that, right, you've paid 20% income tax on that alone. Not to mention all of the other taxes that you've paid. So you pay all of these taxes when you're alive. Then they have the nerve to take almost half when you're not. Honestly, even if I never get to that level, that is absolutely sick of the taxman. And like I said, the government are never going to take that money and put it to good use. And even if you try and help them, even if you try and save them a little bit of cash, the government might criminally charge you. Because it turns out, right, if you want to try and fix a pothole in the UK, if you try and do the government's job for them, like I said, they might actually hold you criminally responsible. Now, I'm not suggesting anyone fill them with what you can see on screen here. Noodles and Cocoa Pops. But if you actually did a pretty bang-up job, like I said, it doesn't matter the condition because they might still take you to court. All for just trying to fix a pothole. And then because all of this government madness is starting to add up, we actually saw the government make to be fair, a pretty decent recommendation. And that is probably one of the first times I've ever been able to say that. Because the government recommended to stock up at least 3 days worth of food and essentials. And to be fair, it might actually be the first ever time where I'm going to say that the government doesn't go far enough. Because any time that you can rely on yourself rather than the government, any time that you can do that, that is an absolute win. And like I said, for the government to actually say something pretty smart, that is extremely rare. And another thing to keep in mind, right, is obviously only stock up if it's affordable. You don't want to leave yourself short because then you're probably going to cause yourself more danger. But if all it takes is just an extra 30p pack of pasta, just every time you go shopping. And yes, it might take a bit more than pasta, but you gotta start somewhere. Because like I said, on a normal day, the government absolutely love to waste your money. But it turns out that they also just love to lose your money. because HMRC staff essentially lost £1 million worth of equipment. That is 1 million. Imagine that, £1 million worth of equipment. Like laptops, phones, computers, tablets, all gone missing. And there's just over 2,000 of them as well. Like 2,000 individual bits of equipment in 3 years. And they were working from home as well. Like, how on earth do you lose a computer or a laptop at home? And the thing is, right, if you did this at your job, like if you either lost or stole £1 million worth of equipment, well, maybe not you, maybe spread out across the office, you can only imagine how much trouble you'd get into. Yet when it comes to the government, this has taken 3 years for us to find out. And like I said, all of this happened over a 1-month period. Just 1 month. So all of these facts really do add up. So thank you for making it this far in the video. Honestly, putting it together is pretty difficult, but I imagine sat there watching it in one go. It's a bit of an eye-opener. But like I said, whether it's Sadiq Khan paying for shoplifters, or street signs made out of dragons, or maybe it's the 11-year-old pothole on the way to Hadrian's Wall that needs decolonising, you must admit, it is kind of funny. Sometimes. So, thank you for becoming one of the 35,668 subscribers. Thank you to the channel members, and thank you for checking out this video on screen.
This country has gone crazy.